There are many different ways to play Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and one of those ways is known as a sandbox, or a sandbox campaign. And what makes a sandbox game so fun is that it is what it sounds like. There's no specific story that players have to follow. What they do and where they go is 100% completely up to them. They can just go into an open world and adventure to their heart's content. So, writing a sandbox campaign is a little different than writing a story campaign. First, you'll approach prep work a little bit differently. Your world needs to have dozens of locations that your players can explore. Whether your world encompasses an entire globe or just a single continent is up to you. And even though you don't have to weave an intricate story, the world does need to feel alive. To make it more organic, you might create locations that are a natural fit to the geography around them. For example, a kingdom with rolling hills and open plains is probably going to have a lot of farms in the region, while the rolling dunes of a desert may hide the dungeons of ancient ruins. Instead of having a singular campaign with an overarching story and subplots, you will tie a standalone adventure to each location. Each one of these adventures should be about the length of a one-shot, or in other words, the adventure should be able to be completed within one game session. A sandbox campaign at its core is really just a bunch of one-shots strung together, where each villain and adventure is episodic in nature. Whether each location has its own adventure that is triggered when the players explore it, or there is a central location from which quests involving different locations stem from, is again up to you. You can mix it up and have domestic areas like farms and villages post their quests within the walls of a nearby castle, while more wild areas like caves and mountains will have quests the players simply stumble upon as they explore. Unlike a one-shot where the game is finished after one session, loot in a sandbox world does not need to be spent or used up by the end of any particular adventure. It can be really fun to place certain magic items in areas the players choose to explore that they can use later in areas they haven't explored yet. You'll have to do this more on the fly, so it's a good idea to have a list of magic items that can be useful in different areas, and a separate list of loot that can be found in each area exclusively. Downtime activities like shopping in a sandbox campaign are pretty easygoing, and it's much easier for the players to make time to engage in those activities. So be as liberal with loot as you want, and don't worry about whether or not the players are going to be able to spend all that gold before the end of the adventure. You can either preset the balance of combat in each location, thus creating low to high level areas, or you can scale each location's difficulty to the level of your players as they level up. There are pros and cons to each, so discuss with your players which sandbox they prefer. Predetermined difficulty levels at each location creates more work for you up front because you have to have each location fleshed out to its finest detail before you play the game. This also limits the places the players can explore when they are low level. However, it does give players a passive, overarching objective. That is, to level up so they can then explore more dangerous and higher level areas. And part of that motivation is that they can find higher quality gear and loot that becomes available to them as they unlock those higher level areas. This is better for players who have a hard time making decisions because it creates a soft guideline that prevents players from feeling overwhelmed by all the possible places they can go. On the other hand, scaling each location to the player's level gives them the ultimate freedom to go where they want when they want. It is the pure sandbox experience. Of course, that then creates more work for you as the DM during the session, because you don't know where they're going to go or what they're going to do next. You'll need to know what kind of encounters are at each location beforehand, and then do some quick math to adjust the challenge rating as they explore new areas. The biggest downside is that this has potential to slow down the pacing of the game. Finally, include as much variety as possible, whether that's the types of monsters players find themselves fighting, the type of terrain they're adventuring in, or even the types of adventures they find themselves experiencing. The promise of an open world sandbox is the promise of many different exciting things. Because each location has an isolated adventure, they can also have isolated features to make the area unique. Think of each location as a snowflake. No two of them are the same even if they are similar. Take ancient ruins for example. Maybe one is inspired by Greek mythology, in architecture and the kinds of monsters that can be found there, while another is heavily influenced by the lore of Middle-earth, looking something like an ancient city of Numenor. This also needs to carry over into gameplay. Try to include heists, search and rescue quests, treasure hunting quests, monster hunting quests, and whatever else you want your players to experience in this world. The joy of the Sandbox campaign comes from the range of adventures your players will have, and the ability to choose where to go and what to do next.